I'm just going to put the link to the live stream in the chat. But
we can already see it if we click on, because it says live, and you can go on that link anyway.
Okay. Just bear in mind, there's a 30-second or so delay. So we are live on YouTube at the moment, but we're not starting till 7 o'clock. This is just so I know everything's all working as planned.
It's nice to actually see how Zoom are doing the spotlight function, where it does actually just show you, because normally it shows yourself and a few other participants when you do a live recording, but the streaming actually seems to work quite nicely.
Well, I will turn the spotlight off at times, but like for now, I'll just switch it off a moment. So now I think if you say something, Connor, you will appear on the live stream.
Yeah, I imagine I would start to appear on the main stream eventually.
And now I'm going to spotlight myself. Yeah, you've just appeared now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not going to watch the YouTube. That is very disorientating.
So I haven't advertised our next jam yet. We've been holding them every month since, well, for 9 years, July 2012. And we've discussed holding a live in-person jam in August, but at the end of August, pending government announcements and all that sort of thing. So it's unlikely we'll have a jam at the beginning of August, but we also still haven't secured our venue, the venue we would normally use. So,
I mean, I believe they just got rid of the restrictions from July 19th, wasn't it? Isn't that what they've just said?
But we normally use the local university as our venue, but the university hasn't been doing any, has been shut basically since Corona came.
Right.
So we haven't
We're
been
not
back.
shut.
So have we got a venue then, Martin?
No.
No.
Hey, I've tried myself up this time.
Oh yes, you could. Yeah.
So
just bear in mind we're live on YouTube, but we don't start. Yeah, we're being streamed at the moment on YouTube, but people can only see me; they can't see anybody else.
Well, am I still all in black? My white background's still not showing up.
Correct.
Well, with the restrictions going, I'd hope we'll be able to do something. Or bookings will be able to be taken.
So that
was only announced today, wasn't it? I think
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's still not even a this is going to happen. It's a this is what should happen.
Yes. So it's a wait and see and find out.
So a guest has just arrived who can answer a question and test audio. So I was going to ask, should I say Jessica Rose? Is that, or is it Jessica?
Jess or Jessica. My mom had 3 girls with 3-syllable J names. You cannot get it wrong. I'm just going to be chill with whatever. So
you said Jess or Jessica Rose?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's somebody some of us know called Carrie Ann, and some people go, "Oh, is Ann like your surname?" No. Her name is Carrie Ann. It's always Carrie. It's not Carrie or Ann. It's Carrie Ann. So Jessica Rose or Jess.
Yeah, and to make it more challenging, I'm Jessica Lynn, and there's a lot of Jess Lynns out there apparently.
I think there's a singer I'm thinking of called Jess. I think we've seen somebody live at not like Mercury Award winning, but sort of fairly well known in the Northwest called Jess Lynn. I think so.
And when you say you've seen someone live, are we indeed live at the moment?
We're live on YouTube, but it's just my video is being spotlighted at the moment. And what will happen is in about 2 minutes, I'll say, so let's just have a look as a bit of context. I'll just see how many we have people watching. We've got 5 viewers at the moment. We'll creep up in a few moments. But what will happen is about 2 minutes or so, I will say hello to the world, and we'll start, and we'll go as we discussed. We'll start with Cerys, Connor, Jess or Jessica Rose, and then Mike, and then after that we have 2 talks, and it's Martin. So Martin is kind of muted in the background, and Mike is doing a talk after that. So my intention is, I'm not brilliant at like DJing and making all of this happen smoothly, but my intention is to try to make sure that we spotlight the person who's speaking. It does that automatically fairly, but at the moment it's just it means people don't have to feel like they're on camera all the time. We have a chat in the Zoom session that we're in at the moment. There's a chat where we can talk privately, and then we have a public chat over on YouTube, and nobody's typed anything in the chat, so I'm going to go over and just say hi in the YouTube chat. If our guests watch the YouTube, I'm not necessarily recommending that you do. The problem with the YouTube link is there's a delay of about 30 seconds or so. So make sure to keep the audio muted, and then, so somebody from Kent Jams has just said hello. So we've got about a minute or so.
Kent Jams. Who
Bethany,
is that going to be? That's Bethany.
Ah, okay. And so Jessica Rose, you've just asked a good question about sharing the link. So we've decided tonight we're going to try share the link more publicly. Until this evening, we've never shared the link publicly. It's only ever been private. But we had a conversation earlier in the week. We're going to give it a go. We have moderation powers. We can kick people out. There's a delay and all of that. And we have a moderator.
It's sort of taking a little bit of a chance on the goodness of people.
Yes.
On the internet.
Yeah. Right. We've got about 20 seconds or so, and then I'm going to start with my open spiel. Jess, something you might have missed was I said there'll be a recording published afterwards on YouTube of this, but my plan is also, if I can, to try to carve up the recordings later on. So there'd be Cerys's interview, Connor's interview, Mike's interview, and Jess's interviews all separate, in the hope that maybe a teacher somewhere in a school might think, oh, let's go and watch Mike's interview today, and then tomorrow, next week in lesson, we can watch Jess's interview, and so on. But how well that'll work, I don't know, because it's always easier if those things are pre-recorded rather than live. Now, I mentioned the word live, and it's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to go over and do all of that stuff I do. So I'm going to get it ready to start recording. So just started the recording. And now I'm going to say, hello, welcome, good evening. It's Monday, the 5th of July, 7 o'clock, and welcome to our jam. We've been running these jams, I worked out the other day, for 9 years. That's right. On the something of July, I think it was the 2nd of July or something like that, back in 2012, a load of us gathered together in a space in Preston, and we were all getting a bit excited about this new computer coming out called the Raspberry Pi, and some people actually had it. And 9 years later, we're still gathering, we're still getting excited, but we're not necessarily getting excited about small, affordable computers anymore. We've grown and we've developed, and now we call our events RJam. So welcome to RJam. We've got a different program, a bit of a departure from what we normally do. This evening, we're hosting 2 events within the same event. We're hosting a careers in tech panel. So I'm going to introduce you to our panel in just a moment. And then that'll last probably 45 minutes to about an hour or so if I don't waffle on too much and get the introduction done nice and quickly and neatly. And then after that, we also have 2 talks on a sci-fi theme. Why sci-fi? Well, we were trying to come up with ideas for themes, and July kind of rhymes with sci-fi. I don't know what rhymes with August, so we haven't yet set a theme for August. So what will happen in a moment is we are going to introduce you to 4 of our panel members. And what we'll probably do is I'll mention who they are and why they're here and the kind of things we're going to be discussing. But first, for you people who are watching at home, you're watching this live, there's a couple of things I want to mention. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Jessica Rose and to a person who helps organize the Kent Jams, and to John and Dawn and to Kerry, all for going over to the YouTube chat, and they've all said hello. We will keep an eye on that, and it may be that certain questions come up. We think, oh, Dawn's just sent a good question in, and we will try to address that. So we're going to move now to the Careers in Tech panel. Now, while we were planning this evening's event, one of the things I'm minded about is often young people who are considering career options, what they might go and study. And there aren't a huge amount of options at school about which subjects to study, but some of them like to think further ahead. Do I see myself as working in tech? So part of tonight's event is to facilitate that in a way to say, well, let's go and talk to some people who work in tech, and let's find out what they do, whether they enjoy it, and if they might have any advice or recommendations. So I'm just going to mention some of the names of the people rather than us go around all of them initially. But if you are watching this live and you look down at the description, you can see more details. So first of all, we will be talking to Cerys Locke. So Cerys will be coming on in just a minute or so. So Cerys, there you are, get ready. And after Cerys, we're then going to move to Connor, and then we're going to go to Jess, and then we're going to go to Mike. And I will ask them just to introduce themselves properly, because the plan is we're recording some of this and we may use it in the future. And we're going to ask them some questions like, what do they do as part of their work? And also about their journey, like how do they get from maybe being 14, 16, 18 to where they are now? Any lessons that they learned along the way, anything that was interesting that stood out for them? And then what advice they might give to others. And then we have another little bit of a spicy question we might throw in, just a bit of a comical, funny, humorous question at the end, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, now, our first guest this evening, Cerys. Cerys, are you there, Cerys? Say hello.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, Cerys. So, good evening, and thank you for joining our Careers in Tech panel. Just tell us your name and something about your current role, but particularly, is there a project that you've worked on or you are working on that you'd like to tell us about?
So I'm Cerys Locke. Some of you may know me because I've been to Preston RJam before. I've been up quite a few times. And at the moment, I'm a first line support apprentice. I'm really enjoying it. I started a year ago, pretty much a year ago. I'm really, really enjoying it. A project that I've worked on and I'm particularly proud of. It's not necessarily to do with work. This is a little while ago. So when I first got into the Raspberry Pi and started going to Raspberry Jams and stuff, and started going to clubs, I was really proud of making a lot of work. And I know that's not significant, but I got my Raspberry Pi, my breadboard and whatever, and that was kind of the start of my kind of journey doing stuff like this, and particularly talking to people, and it's something that I love doing.
Great. You've gone a bit quiet. Okay. Oh, sorry, that was it. You finished your answer. Okay. So I remember the very first time we met you was when you came to our jam in Preston, and you brought a project along, and people were like, whoa, they were so amazed. And they didn't realize you'd actually built it yourself from following, you told me, YouTube tutorials and things like that you'd seen. So you mentioned what your current role is. I think you said you're an apprentice technician. So how, like, I'm guessing you're still kind of not yet at the age of 20. So maybe a few years ago, you were at school. How did you end up going from being in school to doing what you're doing right now?
Yes, so I was at school. I must admit, I didn't particularly enjoy school, and I can kind of see like a few people don't. I know people don't always enjoy school, but I was kind of wondering what to do next. And there was a few really good options I could have taken. I could have done an apprenticeship then. I could have done my A levels. I could have done a BTEC, and I chose to do a BTEC originally. It was okay. I did quite enjoy learning it and the parts that I didn't necessarily already know. But the other thing I was quite keen to do was pass my driving test, which I was really excited about, as you know. So I was really excited about doing that. Anyway, I ended up doing my BTEC. I finished it. And then we were in lockdown actually. So we were kind of in the middle of lockdown. Nobody knew what to do. I did work at a shop part-time while I was doing my college work as well. So, I was kind of going to do that. But then obviously we got moved on to furlough. So I kind of thought, what's my next step? And I kind of wanted to carry on learning, which you do in any job anyway. But I wanted to carry on learning and kind of get awards, or I got certificates, I got MTAs while I've been doing my apprenticeship. So I was specifically looking at about for that. And obviously that's how I found getting into my apprenticeship.
So you mentioned you work in a shop, and I think you've kind of gone through that a little bit too quickly, because there's a lot of things that you do that people don't necessarily, like, for example, you run a community event down in Stafford called Stafford Raspberry Jam. Yeah. And I came down to visit one of those, and you said, oh, can we just nip to the shop for a while? And when I came to visit you in the shop, it was almost as though you were running the shop, because you were telling me, so it's a print shop. People might bring things in that they want photocopying or printing. So it sounds like it's, when I saw it, it's like a shop that you've done quite a lot of different things while you've been there. You've learned quite a lot while working at the shop. Has that helped you in some way, would you?
Yeah, so I'm really, really lucky. My dad and my uncles, they have their print shop, and I'm incredibly lucky to have kind of that background, because that's what got me into kind of computing in the first place. And that's quite an interesting story, actually. While we were in lockdown, I ended up doing quite a lot of cable routing around there, because obviously nobody was in the shops and everything. So we kind of had the time to do it. So that also taught me quite a lot of quite a lot in how to do some cable routing, and also I've set up some servers. I did all sorts, and this was like before I even started my apprenticeship as well. And obviously, as you know, Alan, like I've been doing that for a very long time. And it's quite good. And obviously we're in a nice family unit as well, like with my dad and my uncles. So it's been nice to be able to kind of help them out in a way as well, especially during the lockdowns and everything.
But I can imagine some people watching this thinking, I don't want to work in a shop. I want to have some role working in video games industry or software development. Do you think it's a good idea for people to have some part-time work as well? Do you think that?
Yeah, so I mean, I was helping out on my dad's shop, and I was also working in a clothes shop at the same time. So I was doing quite a lot of things at kind of 16, 17. So I was doing quite a lot of stuff. So yeah, it does help, and it does help with like your interpersonal skills and getting to know people. I mean, I've been quite lucky. I've been around a lot of people from a young age, so I do quite often talk, and it's quite good to build kind of that relationship with like customers or clients, or even like your employers, etc.
Okay, so would you be able to? We've talked a lot about part-time work. If somebody was watching this now and they were thinking, oh, I like the sound of what's happened for Cerys. She said she didn't necessarily have a great experience at school and that, but if they wanted to go along your just try and follow the same path as you, is there any particular piece of advice that you would suggest, other than, say, getting a part-time job in a shop, perhaps?
I'd say get involved with everything you can do. Obviously, I've been running Staffordshire RJam. Obviously, we haven't been able to run for a little while, but and I was helping out with Stafford Code clubs and all that kind of thing. So I'd say get involved, and then also just kind of look for opportunities. Like, there's plenty of opportunities like right on your doorstep a lot of the time, but you don't realise it.
Do you think there's a danger, though, because that you might take on too many things? Because, like, I remember practically every event I went to at one point, you were there, and and I've got to go and pick this up for my nan, and I've got to go and drop this off at the shop. You seem to be involved in quite a lot. Do you think there's a danger about doing too much as well?
I think you only take on what you know you can do. I mean, me and my partner Connor, we bought a house last year. During everything, I know, but we bought a house last year, and we were really lucky. But I have had to stop doing a few things there, like coming to these groups, because we've got a lot of work to do on the house. So as well, you've got to remember you've got your personal life as well as kind of doing everything else, and especially as well when you're working, because obviously I'm doing 9 to 5 at the moment. It's very different than having the part-time jobs that I did have, or going to college part-time like I did have. So you've just got to remember to look after yourself as well, but get involved as much as you can. And to be honest, anyone will say I'm probably I probably do lots of things, but I'm one of them people that does enjoy doing a lot of things.
I suppose if you are going to do lots of things, one thing you need to be careful about is not overcommitting yourself, because you might end up letting people down. Oh, I said I would do that, and this and the other. Right, we have one final question. We asked people to suggest questions that might be a little bit funny or a bit different. So the one we're going to ask you, Cerys, is if you could choose to fight either a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses, which of the two would you choose to go for?
It's a hard question.
It is.
I think 100 duck-sized horses, because they're smaller, and I think it would be quite fun. Like you could have them as pets eventually.
But they're fighting you. You've got 100 little horses all following you around and trying to jump on you and kick you. And
I think I could do it. I'll train them.
Well, listen to the way you were juggling all of those part-time jobs and everything. I don't think you would struggle, really. I think that was the right choice for you. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Cerys. We're going to move now to the second member of our panel. And it's Connor. And Connor, I'm going to ask, could you introduce yourself, and then could you tell us something that you've done as part of your work, something that you're very proud of? So
yeah,
are you there,
course.
Connor? Hello.
Yes, yeah, I'm here. My name's Connor. I'm in Rochester in Kent, and I think it was about 10 years ago. I was actually at an engineer's careers carousel as part of my early sixth form. And it was actually the way that I first got into my career. So, and also playing devil's advocate with Cerys, I actually quite enjoyed school. But I did leave before I managed to finish my A-levels. So, I mean, how I sort of got into everything was, Engineers Careers Carousel. There was a company there. It was a PCB manufacturer. And I was ridiculously intrigued by this. Both my dad and granddad were both in companies that used to manufacture PCBs, and the company that I saw just so happened to be the company that they both worked for. I didn't notice at the time, they didn't notice at the time, but I basically asked lots of good questions, and I made such a good impression that about a week later there was an Instagram post done by the company saying, like, it was the American Sam of like the "We Want You" poster, and they put a picture of my face on their Instagram post and said, "We want you," and that was my sort of first get in touch with us, and we want to give you a job. So it was a very lucky, very right place at the right time sort of thing. But yeah, engineers careers carousel, and I suppose it's very similar to this. It's definitely worth obviously trying to take up opportunity and as many opportunities as possible, and going to pretty much see everything you can.
So for all the projects you've worked on,
so
is there one that stood out, would you say?
So I've got like 2 small projects that I could probably mention. I mean, I'm not a techie person. I'm very much the sort of, there are other people that work in tech that aren't techie. So I am that person. But there was one project very early on in my career that I loved, and I'm now actually able to talk about because a certain Mouse's lawyers have said so. So it's not really anything that's contributed to my career afterwards, but chances are I'll see my work on the big screen for years to come. So my first year of working at the PCB manufacturer, those little green things that have components in computers. I basically had an email that looked very fishy, and someone was asking for some printed circuit boards. And they were like, "Oh, we want it really fast. We want loads, and we want it delivered to Pinewood Studios." So I was a bit curious. I was like, Pinewood Studios, I know that. They seem to make some films there. And they had a very funky code name on their delivery address, and it was something to do with food, and it was one of the production names for a film. And it turns out they were making the latest triple Star Wars films. So the circuit boards they were asking for that we had to make in a very short turnaround time were for all the animatronics in all the films. So I'm quite proud that a lot of the electronics that we've done were for BB-8, the little round ball thing. And interesting fact, he's not just orange on the outside. All of the circuit boards are orange on the inside as well. But yeah, that's one thing that it kind of lives on. I'm quite proud of that moment because I was part of something. I did not work for Disney. They simply subbed the work out. Just got to clarify that. But yeah, that was pretty much it from that side. So that was my sort of techie side. And on a photography side, so this is very much about perseverance. Something small, but I'm rather proud of. So there's an event called MozFest, and I've been going for many, many years. And for about 4 or 5 years, I just went there to take pictures for myself because I'm a very keen photographer, and I basically always put up my pictures on Flickr, and they kept on getting noticed and got some good views. And one of the years, I basically begged them, please, can I volunteer to do some photography, like, so you can put this on your album. I'll do it for free. And yeah, eventually they said yes. And then next year they said, cool, we want to pay you to do some work. So I was like, oh, fantastic. And then the year after that, they contacted me saying, look, we need a lead photographer. Our in-house photographer's gone ill. Come and work for us for this time round. So it's the case of perseverance. So I mean, it was like 7 years in the making. But one of my dreams was to be the lead photographer for a huge event, and I managed to get that. Yes, it's a very long time to do it, but it's one of the things that I've sort of worked on for a long time to do, and it was kind of a nice sort of flag in the career chart on photography level.
So sometimes people use the word serendipity, but or just about being in the right place at the right time. But it wasn't just that, as you said, it was perseverance. You kept doing this thing and doing it. And then people will often recognize your talents and your abilities because, photographs, what was that guy? Connor, yes, let's find him and let's get him.
Yeah, you can be, I suppose people could be considered quite annoying if they persevere so much, but what's the worst that can happen? It's just try and get out there. I mean, one of the things when I was applying for my first role, I obviously had to go for a interview still. But I put quite a lot of effort into my CV. So my school actually got a brand new laser cutter. And what I did was basically I laser cut my CV out to make a good impression. And it was very branded to the company. And they were like, wow, we've never seen something as original as this. And it's just about leaving a last impression as well. So if you can do something that makes you stand out, do it.
And it sounds like you've tried lots of different things, but you've also found one or two things you think, you know what, this is, I'm really happy doing this thing. I'm really enjoying. I mean, it's no secret. I can see lots of cameras behind you. So you must have decided at some point, you know what? This brings me pleasure. When I take photos, it brings pleasure to other people as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think I mentioned this question earlier on, but one of the things that I would love to do and not get paid for it and just be happy doing it is being a photographer. Granted, I wouldn't want to do every like wedding photography that my family asked me to do because I want to be part of the moment. But I mean, there's events where I genuinely have a lot of fun doing it. It doesn't feel like work. And I suppose that's key to finding a good career path. If you do enjoy it and it doesn't feel like work, then you're onto something. That's something you should try and continue to do.
Do you think, though, at the same time, it means you sometimes have to put up with a lot of other stuff that you don't enjoy at the same time?
A couple of years ago, I would have said yes. But I've been very fortunate in my current role. I suppose that sort of brings us on to the next question of what was my route into the current role. Sorry, it's not like I knew what question you were going to ask. So I previously lost my last job due to the pandemic, like so many other people as well. And luckily, my boss basically recommended a job to apply for. So I applied, and then a month later I got an email saying, look, sorry, we're actually closing this role for now because we're restructuring the company. We don't know what's going to go on. And this is the case of the perseverance thing. And I got back in touch every single month with them. Is be like, look, how's things going? Is it going well? And I got an email back one day and I was like, yeah, we're going to open the role back up. It's changed a little bit. And so I read through job description. Actually, that's even better. So, yeah, I applied for that. I don't know how many applicants there were. There might have been one. I might have just been very lucky. There might have been 100. I don't know. But always treat yourself as though they've specifically picked yourself. Don't do yourself down. Because if there was only one applicant, it doesn't matter. You're still technically the best person for the job. But yeah, that's perseverance once again, I suppose.
So I'm really glad we've had this opportunity to chat, because it sounds like some of the things you're talking about, you can buy these posters, you see these things online on social media, these motivational sort of quotes, and there's two of them that you reminded me of. One of them is, do more of that thing that brings you happiness, or if something makes you happy, well, do lots of that. And the other one is it's about, if you really want to do something, do it. Like sometimes people say to me, I really want to be a teacher. We'll go and do it. And they said, but I'm not in a school. You don't have to be in a school to be a teacher. You don't have to be employed as a photographer to be a photographer. And it sounds
exactly
like, so it sounds like you found, and you can derive happiness from doing the things that you enjoy. And you didn't wait for somebody to tell you.
So exactly that. I mean, photography, unfortunately, given that there's no events happening at the moment, is basically zero. And it's nice to see some of my photography friends actually starting to get the jobs again that they were getting, which is fantastic. But I mean, the job that I'm now in is only a part-time role, but I've never been so happy in a role before. Once again, it doesn't feel like work. No, it's not photography. Photography is something I can do on the side. But I found that having this less hours in terms of work to do has freed me up so much in terms of my personal time. My mental health is so much better than what it was. And my quality of living is fantastic. I don't have to commute into London, so I'm saving 2 hours there every single day. And I'm doing 2 hours less work a day than a full-time role. So I've got back 4 hours
money on travel as well.
It's saving money as well. And so it's just having a decent salary is not always a good compromise for doing lots and lots of work. So don't undersell yourself. See what value you're worth.
Just sticking with photography for a moment. Like if let's just roll back the years a little bit and say, here's 14-year-old Connor. He's at school. He's getting to make his GCSE choices. And Connor's thinking, I want to be a photographer. I want to be a photographer. But there was no GCSE in photography. So what do? Do you go, well, that's it. No chance. I'm never going to work.
It was actually a bit disheartening when I was at school and I was getting into photography. I think it was about 14 when I started getting into it. My granddad basically had this old DSLR that he gave me, and I just went around and started messing around with it. And luckily, there was a photography club that started in my school. But I was in it for about 2 weeks, and I said, Connor, this isn't the right place for you. You're too advanced. I know that's like putting me out there. Yes, I'm blowing my own trumpet. But it was like, you need to try and find something at your level, because you've got a talent and you need to try and use it. So unfortunately, there was no sort of outlet to try and pursue that career. But I mean, I do it as a happy thing on the side. Like, I do it when I want to do it, and I enjoy it, and I get to travel around for it as well. So just because there's not a particular subject for it doesn't mean that you can't do it in the future, because chances are there's subjects that you're learning at the moment, and there's jobs when obviously you leave school. There are jobs that obviously don't have subjects around it. AI has only just become a recent thing, and there haven't been any school subjects on it until recently, and yet this is the next big thing. So don't be disheartened. Get a good foundation in like relative skills, and then obviously you can work on that. You can spend some time of your own working on your own subjects as well.
That's fantastic. Right, we're going to finish off with one final sort of silly question that was suggested by our audience. So this one, Connor, if you could only ever use one of these social media platforms in future, Twitter, Facebook, or TikTok, and you couldn't use the other two, which of them would you
is there an option to not use any?
No, you have to use one of them.
I would probably say Twitter.
This could be this could be personal, or it could be for professional. Like,
so I mean, so two ways. Twitter is great for getting news fast and finding out different opinions, but the worry is that you can sometimes get into a silo as well. So it's very one-sided conversation. They don't necessarily have that. So it's worth looking at all points of views. But I would say Twitter is probably the best one.
Don't you think there's a danger that some people overshare? Like, just let's say you've been cleaning your kitchen or polishing your oven or something.
Hence why I have a private profile. It's mainly to air out your dirty laundry, but at the same time, if you know someone and you want to talk to them there, it's a good place to communicate.
So I think you're saying there are some good platforms out there, but be careful what you post, and it's good to
definitely
have a professional one.
I think when so when I started applying for jobs, I generally just go through your social media and just give it a good cleanse.
Nice and sparkly like that oven.
Yeah, you see these random tweets from when Elon Musk done something 20 years ago or whatever. Yeah, not that Twitter was around 20 years ago, but yeah, just if you are applying for jobs, just give your background a little check.
Okay. Right, so we're going to move on to our next panel guest in a moment. I'm just checking that our panel guest is there and is with us. So we're going to go to Jessica Rose next.
Hey.
Great. Okay. So Jessica Rose, we're starting with the same kind of question as well, is to help us understand you and what you do in tech. Could you tell us a little bit, but particularly a project that you're particularly proud of?
Fantastic. So what a lot of people ask what I do, and usually in the context of, do you even have a job? Because I'm really lucky. I'm getting to work part-time as well. And I work in developer relations, which is this idea of I work with a developer-facing service or product, and I help them talk to more developers. And I really love talking to younger folks about this, because I think as I was an educator before I moved into tech, and I think as parents or as teachers, it's always really tempting to be like, oh, well, this thing that you like that I can't see the value in, ignore that and be deadly serious. But stuff like, oh gosh, are you very good at TikTok? Or, oh, are you really good at social media? Oh, are you making and editing your own videos? The space I'm in, those are actively sought out. I must confess, I'm not great at TikTok. So if anybody wants to be like, oh, Auntie Jess, this is how you do it, come and get me.
So the part of the question was something you're particularly proud of. So I
Oh.
could just search for you online and I can find lots of projects that, oh, Jessica Rose did this, Jessica, but tell us one for you that really stands out.
Well, I must confess that one of the things I'm proudest of doesn't really feel like a formal project. I've been doing open career advice sort of calls with just random delightful strangers who want to work in tech or who work in tech for about 6 or 7 years now. And I must confess that's the thing I like best, just getting to talk to new people about like, oh, what's your problem? Well, that's a weird problem. Oh, let's see if we can unpick this. It has been really, really exciting to sort of get out of my bubble and hear about what folks are looking at.
Do you find if you're giving advice to other people, do you find is the advice coming from you thinking, oh, well, this is the way I would always do it? Or do you?
So I'm nodding because I'm really conscious that everyone gives bad advice. Nobody tells you what's going to be best for you. Everybody tells you, and this is so specific, they're going to tell you what they like to think they would do in your situation, not what they would actually do, but what their idealized self would do. And it's usually a lie. Like, oh, I would definitely do this responsible thing where I go to bed early and eat my vegetables. Yeah. But the advice I tend to give is mostly listening, and then trying to unblock folks. It's never, oh, I think you should. Most folks who talk to me, they know what they want to do. They're making really, really good movement towards it. And just being able to say things like, oh, you know what, getting your first job in tech is really hard. It's not just you, is most of what I get to do, and say, hey, this problem you're having makes sense. It's not your fault.
So when people tell you, just, I'm finding this, trying to find the career I want in tech really hard, you could say, well, Alan, that's because it is hard.
And I think we set a lot of expectations that are fibs, if not lies. So when we say, oh, you should go into tech, there's so much demand. The unemployment rate in tech is less than 1%, which is true. But that doesn't really set an appropriate expectation. Whereas getting your first job in tech, especially if you're self-taught, can be really, really challenging. And we say, oh, salaries for developers, for an example, they're fantastic. And when you talk to somebody getting their first junior dev role, maybe in London, and they say, oh, cool, I still have roommates. I have a lot of roommates. And you say, yeah, the salaries pick up later. We didn't really set good expectations for you.
So you were telling us you work in developer relations. That doesn't sound to me like the kind of thing a 14-year-old would fill in a form. Like 14-year-old Jess, come on, what subjects are you going to choose at school? I say, well, which ones do I need to choose to go into developer relations? So there was an interesting journey where you've probably stopped off at a few other stops along the way.
Yeah, so I was a teacher and a teaching assistant for a long time. I did some voice acting for a while, which, I don't necessarily recommend it, but like the pay is nonsense and it's stressful and you're not going to get to work on cartoons. And just bounced around a bit and sort of accidentally landed in this. I wanted to go to a conference, and tech conferences, the jams are free and accessible and lovely. But traditional tech conferences are wonderfully expensive. And I found a con where if you give a talk at a conference, they give you a free ticket. And later I learned that they'll fly. When travel exists again, y'all don't get on any planes. But they'll fly you there and they'll put you in a nice hotel. And who doesn't want? And after going, I met a lot of people who were like, oh yeah, this is my job. And I'm like, yeah, okay. You stay in a nice hotel and you just get up and yeah, all right.
So some of that sounds a little bit like having the confidence to put yourself forward, because I know sometimes when I've said to people, how would you feel about speaking at this event? Oh, no, nobody would want to hear me speak. Whereas you sound like you've already managed to cross over that barrier of, well, heck, surely people would want to listen to what I've got to say.
I'm not sure I would frame it as confidence. I think I usually encourage folks who want to go into a similar space to just get really comfortable with being wrong out loud. And being a teacher is a fantastic fit for that. The first time a 7-year-old is like, miss, that's actually not even remotely true. You can either double down and be a bad teacher, or just get like, oh, really? Yeah, okay. Yeah. and get really comfortable with being wrong about the most basic things and just really chill about it. I kind of gently argue that, again, this is people giving advice based on their perspectives, but I gently argue this is sort of my biggest life pro tip as well. Like, you're going to be wrong. You're going to be wrong a lot. You can either pretend you're not or get increasingly chill about it. I mean, you could do both. I still do both.
So we follow each other on social media, and occasionally we'll interact. And I've noticed recently you'll put questions out there sometimes that doesn't necessarily strike me as, oh, Jess needs to know the answer to this question. It's almost like to stimulate some topical conversation or debate. I think there was one day you were saying, what's the strangest thing that anybody's ever asked you to do as part of your work?
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that'd be a good question to ask Jess. What's the strangest thing you've ever been asked to do as part of your work?
Oh gosh, what is I'm gonna grab a drink of water. What's the strangest? I get asked to do strange things so regularly that I'm kind of mellow about it.
Well, I suppose we all have a different spectrum of strange. What may be strange for one person may not be so strange for another. I mean, sometimes when you're in a technical role, people will sometimes ask you questions that they perceive as technical.
Yeah. I think the weirdest thing I've done is like go and pick up someone's dog from the vet at a conference where the conference organizers are just all over the place and they're like, we need somebody who can go get this dog. And I'm like, how big's the dog? All right. Yeah. like,
oh, pick up rather than collect the dog.
Yeah. I had no idea. I was like, is your dog okay? How big is it? Is it gonna bite me? We're in Berlin. Like, can I walk? Like, so I think, could someone, hey, can you go get this dog from the vet at a conference, was probably the weirdest one. And delightful. Who's not going to want to go get a dog?
So some of the people watching this, I'm presuming will be a young audience who haven't yet absolutely decided which career and study choices they're going to go along with. And it may be that, when we're at turning points in our life, like which subjects to study at GCSE or which degree to study, there's often no shortage of other people who will, you know what, you want to do this and you want to do the other. So somebody who you're saying you're often given advice, is there a piece of advice you would give in terms of receiving advice from others?
Yeah. So my hobby is I'm really interested in reading about pop psychology. So instead of specific advice, I'm going to talk to you all about my understanding of the psychology of decision making. And it's really cool. So if you, and I understand being younger, like going back in time, you're like 2 years, that's like a tenth of my life. Or I forgot that young people are considerably younger than 20. 2 years, that's a massive chunk of my life. Sorry, y'all, I'm very old. But when you make a decision, you say, oh, I could move overseas, or I could get a job in my hometown. And I made this choice when I mumble years ago. And then everything that happened after that, one of them is really abstract. I don't know what my life would have been like if I had stayed in my hometown, but I do know what happened. And I have like really firm anchors to the memories of moving overseas and doing this and doing, because you've got those memories. And there's a body of research around decision making that says, once you make a decision, once enough time passes, we almost always think that the decision we made was the right choice because we've got these wedded memories. As long as the decision you make doesn't blow up your whole life, you might regret it for a while, but the longer you wait, the more you're likely, statistically, to think you made the right choice. So terrifyingly, it's that nothing matters decision-wise. I mean, obviously that these individual decisions that you may be agonizing over matter a lot less than you think they do. But then really excitingly, hey, as long as I'm okay with myself and as long as I like myself, I'm going to be comfortable with the decisions I've made as I grow into them. I always find that so freeing. So when people give you advice, take it or don't take it. They're not necessarily telling you what's right for you. But the decisions you make, once you settle into them, they're going to feel okay.
Okay, and we're going one final kind of slightly strange question. Was suggested
stranger
by,
than, oh, well, you know, nothing matters in a good way.
Okay, well, it's a slightly strange question. So I'd like to imagine in your current role that you are using a laptop and a mobile phone, and somebody's going to say to you, Jess, we're going to take one of these away for you for the next 3 or 4 years. You cannot use it. So which would you choose to keep?
Oh yeah, my laptop's gone. That's fine. Yeah,
the laptop is gone.
Yeah, like someone else can do my blog post writing. We're good. Like that is my work machine, and like this is where my heart sits. So yeah, no one's taking my pocket computer.
Okay,
so pretend to go back and forth on that, but no, my phone. Yeah.
Okay, well that surprised me. I thought you were going to say the other, but it's I suppose it's how you phrased it, as your pocket computer rather than your phone. It's your pocket computer, which is your heart.
Yeah.
So Jess, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to go to our final panelist this evening, who's Mike. And Mike, can we hear you, please?
Hello.
Hello, Mike. And Mike, we're going to ask you if you could just introduce yourself, like your full name, tell us a little bit about your role, but particularly some project that you've worked on recently. Doesn't have to be a work project.
Okay, I'm Michael Horne. I'm a web developer and educational charity based in Bedfordshire. I've been a developer for 24 years, yikes. I'm also a co-organiser of Cambridge Raspberry Jam and Pi Wars after discovering the Raspberry Pi back in 2012 and learning electronics from it and that kind of thing. As a web developer, I'm probably stupidly proud of an awful lot of the work I've done. I've developed my own framework for web applications. I've rewritten search engines, online shops, that kind of thing. But the one I'm working on at the moment is actually my favorite. It's one I'm really proud of. For 2 years, we've been developing and implementing a new responsive website that will work on phones, tablets, PCs, whatever. And it's, as I say, it's been going for 2 years. And at the end of July, it's going live. It's got a completely new CMS. It's got a completely new workflow on that. It's got a completely new design, layout, CSS and JavaScript have all changed. All the content's been redone, new features, all kinds of stuff. And I'm really proud of it because it's been me and my boss. My boss has been doing the content, I've been doing the coding, and it's been a really good collaboration. And that's one of the things I'm really proud of at the company where I'm working now, is the collaborative stuff.
Mike, did you say this new site, you've been working on it for 2 years?
On and off, yes.
So there's a project you've been working on for 2 years that the general public haven't seen yet.
That's right, yeah.
That must be immensely frustrating. You know,
Oh, yeah.
And is it going to be another 2 years, or it's like any day now people will get to see?
No, end of July, beginning of August. We've got to go live date, so that's the big thing at the moment.
Gosh, because I think, you know, sometimes I'll work on a project that I might spend a few days, and then I'll want to show everybody, say, hey, everybody, look at this. But I suppose it's different when you're working for an organization as you are. You can't just say, hey, everybody, here's our new site. Oh, you don't like it? Oh, I'll take it away and go back and work on it.
Yeah, I think it's because normally when we have new features, and when I say new features, they tend to be big new features, we'll do them in a couple of months or a couple of weeks or whatever. And it'll be a case of put it live. If it goes slightly wrong, that's fine. We'll fix it as it goes and keep it very agile. But because it's been a completely new CMS and the whole site's had to be rebuilt from the ground up, it's just taken so long.
So the CMS, that's the way that it brings together all of the text, the images, any videos, links,
That's right.
forms, all of
Sorry,
those
I'm
things.
being techie.
Well,
content management system.
Well, I would imagine a lot of people watching this may know what CMS is, but I just wanted to make sure that I understood.
Yeah.
So the other thing I was thinking is that when they say, right, Mike, we're going live with this on the end of July, will that be a night that when you go to bed the night before, you'll be lying there thinking, my gosh, I really hope it works? Or no, it'll all be smooth, it'll be fine.
I do a lot of theatre work, so I tend to keep my stage nerves for stage. No, I'll probably get quite a good night's sleep with the excitement of thinking, right, let's do this thing.
It balances with the frustration of, my gosh, how much longer do we have to wait, before the world gets to see this?
This year, it's been a case of, my goodness, it's been that long. Can we not have that again, please?
So, in general sense of the word, if you were talking to other people about what your role is, you could say to people, I'm a web developer. Yeah.
Yep.
And sometimes people divide web developers into two categories. People talk about the front end, the aesthetic, the visual bits that people get to see. And then some people talk about the back end, the mechanical elements. But there's also, we know, loads of other steps in between. So are you more towards the front or towards the back?
To be honest, I love doing both of them.
Okay.
And I get to do both of them. That's one of the reasons that I love my job, is that I get to do the front end and the back end and all the bits in between and all the database stuff and all the search engine stuff and the digital rights management and all the taking content, bringing it together into something that you can actually use. That's kind of what I love about it.
So if we roll back to when you were 14, did that exist as a career, web development? No.
The internet, what's that?
So how did you know at 14 or 15 that you wanted to be a web developer?
I didn't. I thought I'd probably...
You didn't know what you wanted to do?
No. No.
That sounds a little bit chaotic.
My parents are very fond of reminding me that I said I never wanted a career in computers.
Oh dear. Did you not follow their advice then?
No, this was me saying it. I thought, no, I find computers too frustrating. I still find them frustrating, but not too frustrating.
But yet you still work with them.
Yep.
Yes. And for some people who don't know, you also organize a giant club in the city of Cambridge for people who also like computers and come together, the Cambridge Raspberry Jam and the Pi Wars and all of these things. So for somebody who never wants to work with computers, you've not been that successful, have you?
Not really, no. That's it. Mind you, if you're going to fail at anything, and having a decent career out of a failure to make a decision is pretty good.
But you must derive some sense of enjoyment or pleasure from your work. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't still be doing this if you didn't enjoy it to the extent.
That's right. I mean, it's fair to say I didn't particularly enjoy my very first job, but it was in computing, because I wasn't very good at it. But when I moved into my second role, which was sort of the next building, I sort of found, I can do this with data. It's great. All this information that's out there, and trying to bring that into something that somebody can use. It gave me a lot of pleasure, and it still does.
So I'm still trying. I'm a little flabbergasted. I'm trying to figure out, how has Michael gone from being much younger Michael, I hate computers, never want to work with them, to not only do I work with them every day, but I think about them in the evenings, and it's what my hobby is. How and when did it change? Where was the point we thought, oh, computers, I like these?
Well, I got to secondary school, and I, as you say, 14, I was very much not wanting to do it. And about 15, I think it was, we started to get BBC Micros. And we had a little network set up at school, and it was a case of one computer could make another computer do something, and that fascinated me. I thought, how's it doing this? How's this magic happening? And little by little, it sort of broke down my reluctance to, and thought, well, you can find out how that happens, and you can be part of that magic that some people don't understand, some people do, and little by little, the technology sort of start with it overwhelmed me, and then eventually it was a case of, oh yeah, they only do what you tell them to do.
So it sounds like, in a way, it's like I myself, and I have met other people who just love the whole concept and idea of computers, but for you the attraction was more about the potential of what you could do with them. We were talking to Connor earlier, and Connor was talking about his passion and interest in photography. So I guess Connor's interest in technology was probably more strongly characterized. Oh, I can import images and I can edit the images, rather than the actual camera, although he did have a few cameras in the background, I noticed as well. So some of the questions that I was suggesting we might discuss, like lessons that you've learned along the way. I mean, I feel like we're spelling it out there that at 14 you were, nope, I'm never going to work with computers. And now a few years later, actually you are. Is there a lesson in there somewhere, do you think, or a piece of advice that you might offer?
I think the lesson to be learned is don't force anything on yourself, and don't force yourself away from anything else, away from anything. At the end of the day, if you're drawn to the tech, then there must be a reason for it. So explore it.
I don't know if you're old enough to remember, there was a film starring the character James Bond, and the title of this film, I think it was like in the late 80s or something, Never Say Never Again. And those words that come back to me, never say never. Like, I'm never going to work with computers, and I'm never going to take photographs, and I'm never going to. Hang on, Alan, didn't you say that you would never do that? Right, we're going to move on to our final kind of slightly funny question a little bit. So I want you to imagine that on the wall behind you, you're going to have a poster of a person. Now, just for the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to tell you it has to be one of the following three people. It either has to be Steve Jobs, or Bill Gates, or Linus Torvalds, and you would have to choose. And then that poster would be on the wall behind you, and every day you come into this room, you would have to see the poster, and you would have to say Steve or Bill or Linus. You would have to say good morning to them. Thank you very much for bringing the gift of computing to me. So which of those three do you think you'd be most likely to choose?
Probably Bill Gates, because I've always been a Windows man.
Bill Gates? I mean,
Yes.
what has Bill Gates ever done for us?
I think Bill Gates is an intriguing guy, because you think, money's really changed him, and actually money has changed him, but now he's sort of come back round to being more of a benefactor, of doing good with what he's managed to come up with.
I think if you look at various lists that are published from time to time, who are the richest people in the world, you'll probably see that a lot of them have that they haven't inherited their wealth. It's come from success in technology.
Yeah.
And certainly Bill Gates' name is pretty much always somewhere towards the top. But if I'm right, he stood down from sort of leading and directing Microsoft a few years ago, and he set up a foundation along with his wife, previous wife, current wife, whatever title we want to use. So it's about trying to put some of that back. Okay, interesting choice. Do you know what I'm going to do? You surprised me a little bit with that one. I'm going to throw another question at you now. So if you were told, oh, by the way, Michael, the website, we've got another 2 weeks or so. We're not quite ready yet to release it. But by the way, you can only use from now on either a keyboard or a mouse, and you have to choose between the two. If you can only work from now on with either a keyboard or a mouse, which would it be?
I would be very practical and go for the keyboard, because I can always learn keyboard shortcuts.
but it would be frustratingly slow, especially in terms of, I mean, I suppose if I'd had Connor that question earlier, we're talking about photography, he probably would have come up with a very, very different answer altogether.
I mean, for some of the creative stuff that I do, not having a mouse would be an absolute disaster.
Because you did say you work on the front end things as well. Right. Well, thank you very much, Michael, for joining us, and to Connor, and to Jessica Rose, and to Cerys, our Careers in Tech panel. Now, I'm not sure the smoothest way of doing this now, but Michael, you're also down to give a talk in a moment or two. And are you feeling like you're ready to launch into that, or do you need a minute or two to think things through? I could waffle for a minute or two. I'm very good at doing that. And then you could say, okay, Alan, I'm ready to do my talk.
Yeah, okay. Give me about a minute.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spotlight myself on the video just for a moment. Now, for those of you who don't know, a couple of things just to mention. So we have just done our Careers in Tech panel. We had 4 panelists that we spoke to them. And if you go on later tonight, you'll probably find the recording of the stream will be live on there. And my plan is later on to chop that up and make them available as little segments. Now, a couple of things that are coming up in the immediate future you need to know about. So we have 2 talks coming up for you in the next half hour. We have Michael Horne, who I've just been talking to, and we have Martin Bateman. Michael is going to be discussing another project he's been working on. It's not the web page that or the website, I should say, that he's been working on. He's going to tell us about the project. And then we have Dr. Martin Bateman from UCLan, who is one of the co-founders of the Preston Raspberry Jam. And 9 years ago, when we first started running these jams here in Preston, Martin and I sat down with how we're going to do this thing. So Martin will be here, and he's going to run a little bit of a demonstration in terms of how you might use artificial intelligence to create a kind of interactive filter, like the kind of things that you might have already seen if you're using these on social media photo sharing sites like Snapchat. Now, a little bit further afield, we've been running these jams typically on the first Monday of every month since July 2012. Even when Corona and COVID and social distancing came, we've still been running these, but we've been running them online. And it means now that as social distancing restrictions, regulations are being relaxed, for a while now, we've been discussing how might we go back to, and should we, and should we not? So one of the things we're planning to do is to have an in-person event in Preston. And the plan that we've been discussing is to do that on the final Saturday of August. But it wouldn't be an evening thing, it would be a morning thing. And we're hoping that some of our people who've joined our community since we've been in lockdown, we're hoping that they might be tempted to come down and join us. Maybe we could go out for a pizza or something on the Friday night. They might want to stay. Preston, where we are, has got lots of budget places to stay. It's got some nice places to stay as well. And that they might stay over. We'll meet up and do things on the Saturday morning. However, we're still having a little bit of an issue securing a venue, which making me a little bit nervous. So we're still in conversations with a few different people about which venue because at the moment we can't just go ahead and use our normal venue. Then the plan after that would be, we have September, October, November, December. Now, I've had some conversations recently with Simon Monk, who has very generously donated some kits for us to give away to members of our community. Now, it's not a huge number. So one of the ideas that I've been having and discussing with others about our jam is we might provide these kits to people on the understanding of the basis that they would then come back to a future jam to show us what they did with the kit. So it's a microbit electronic starter kit, which includes a few projects. Now, obviously, we'll go and announce this properly at an Eventbrite page listing where we will say, this is how we're going to do it, and this is how you get the kit, and we'll sort out getting those kits to you. But one of the things we were exploring was with the August event, whether it might be possible to have one or two people or families come along, and we could support them while they try and do things with this kit. And then we would then have an event, perhaps October, where people can show what they managed to do with the kit. Because that's one thing we miss about our jams. We used to have a lot of practical workshops where people would come along and build things. Now, Michael, if you're feeling like you're ready, you can give me a thumbs. Oh, I'm getting a thumbs up from Michael. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop spotlighting myself, and we're now going to go over to Michael, and you'll hear a little bit of chat between me now and Michael. And I'm going to the gallery view, and what I will do in a moment is I will turn off my camera. So Michael, so you've got about 10-15 minutes, if that's all right.
I can rattle through it in that, yes.
Brilliant. Okay, and it's your PicoPicorder project you're going to tell us all about. So if I go back to the speaker and switch off I'm going to spotlight you, and you've got the stage.
Hi, everyone. Hello again. So I'm going to talk to you about my PicoPicorder project, which is basically how to make one project idea last for 9 years and still enjoy it after all that time. So I've always been a Star Trek fan, and one of the things I love about Star Trek is that it's always showing you what technology will be available in the future. So, for instance, the modern mobile phone, especially the flip phone, was heavily influenced by the original Cerys communicator. Some of the technology, of course, like the transporter, hasn't been achieved, but who knows what will happen in the future. However, one of the pieces of tech shown in Star Trek is now well within reach, with some caveats. The Star Trek tricorder is a multi-sensor device capable of scanning for life forms, movement, environmental changes, seismic activities, and there was a really low point in the Star Trek series and movies. Yeah, Mr. Tricorder, not my favorite film, that one. But anyway, back in 2012, the Raspberry Pi had just come out, and I was wondering what it could do. So I didn't think it was up to being a general purpose computer, which was kind of how it was pitched, but it was a bit slow. The operating system was a bit rubbish, but it had potential. So I received my first Raspberry Pi in July of 2012, and I was really intrigued by the physical computing side because I'm a programmer, I do software all the time. So for me, the Pi was all about the electronics and the possibilities. So I got the idea to build myself a tricorder, just like on Star Trek. And I thought to start with, I would buy a toy prop and convert it, and then realized that the Pi wouldn't fit in there with the SD cards whacking things sticking out at the end. So that was out. So I began to research all different kinds of sensors and cases I could use to construct it. And October of 2012, I was all ready to go to the Cambridge Raspberry Jam, one of the original ones, before I started organizing it, armed with my device, and it suddenly stopped working. So I wimped out of going. However, one of the first Milton Keynes Raspberry Jams is coming up, so I thought I'd get it working for them. That's one of the most important things I learned. It's important to have goals and deadlines. So I seem to remember I'd already been to a couple of the jams already, and I wanted to go to the next one to show what I managed to build. This was it. Used a lot of Lego. I really wanted to get analog sensors working, so I got an Arduino Leonardo to clone that I'd won, and a proto plate to do some soldering, really bad soldering to start with. So that made up part of it. For version 2, I discovered that I could get an analog sensor inputs directly into the Pi using an analog to digital converter chip. I found something that would make that easy, and I got to grips with I2C sensors and GPS. This is the Raspberry Pi PicoPicorder version 2. What we have is a Lego case with a Raspberry Pi in a Mod My Pi case and a 7.2 amp battery pack. It's got a number of sensors on board, as you can probably tell. Anyway, this monstrosity, as I like to refer to it, by 2013, I'd been through a lot of strip board. Between my soldering skills and my general lack of care, I'd gone through a lot, and I was now up to version 10 of the PicoPicorder. I'd managed to find an enclosure which was a much more handheld size, and then I shot this video as a walk around.
This is what I'm hopefully calling the last version of the PicoPicorder, version 10. Version 10 relates to the number of circuit boards that I've soldered and messed up and been successful. What we have is we have a project box with all the innards in it. We have an LCD screen with 4 lines and an I2C backpack. The easy.
Suffice to say, it had an awful lot of sensors in it. And since 2013, I've experimented with lots of other handheld devices, each time going slightly smaller. So this is the inside of the one I just showed you a minute ago. But each time I had to compromise on the capabilities that I could offer as it got smaller because the case got too crowded for anything. I used my original Model B until the Model A came out, which had a lower profile. And then I moved on to the A+, which was the little square one, and then the Pi Zero, which was obviously much smaller. But I did get a bit sidetracked, a bit distracted by organising a bunch of events for CamJam and Raspberry Pi Foundation and Pi Wars. And then many devices later, fast forward to January 2021 even, and the release of the Pico, which much lower power, much smaller. And I thought, I wonder if I could build something again. So I started to breadboard and prototype, and I used Fritzing to prototype it. And I managed to use a lot of the components I already had from Adafruit. For instance, the GPS that I'm using on the new one is the original GPS from the version 1. I'm not terribly sure it works anymore. I'd also got a 3D printer and I wanted to do a case. So I went back to stripboard and I did a new version based on the Pico. But what I really wanted to do was to create a PCB. And I tried to follow Joe Hinchcliffe's tutorial on using KiCad, but I completely failed, not because of the tutorial, which was actually is very good, but because KiCad is such a collection of separate parts that I couldn't see the wood for the trees. So I went back to Fritzing, and you can do PCBs in Fritzing. So I did a stripboard version of it with the headers only and the connections between them, and then translated that into a PCB design. This is version 2, which has got mounting holes and extra silk screen. I still want to learn KiCad because apparently it's the right way of doing it, but it does seem like a bit of a mountain that I don't need to climb at the moment. This is my first version of the PCB, with the Pico just plonked onto it. One of the tracks for the LED, which is over here, didn't come out. That one, the one that gives you the power, and I still don't know quite why. So for version 2, I used Fritzing again and forced it to give me that extra track. I sent it off to a company in China the second time, and you get different color options when you go to China, and I think you'll agree it looks better in black. I used color-coded headers when I populated it, but not for the power. I wanted to solder directly onto it for the power, so I did that. Software-wise, now, when it comes to software and Raspberry Pi products, I kind of used to wimp out a little bit because it's like I do software all day. What do I want to do? What do I want to do on the Pi for? But I prototyped the software. This is the thermal camera prototype. This is just hooked up to the Pico with jumper wires. And I decided I wanted to use CircuitPython rather than MicroPython because it's a lot easier to use in terms of how you get the code onto the board. And there's loads of libraries available. It's almost a no-brainer, but it does have disadvantages. User interface-wise, there was only one choice, LCARS. It was designed by a guy called Michael Okuda for the next generation. I put a picture of one of my prototype screens up. Somebody retweeted it at Michael Okuda and he liked it, so I must be doing something right. I wanted to use the touchscreen to trigger changes in mode, which is why you've sort of got buttons around the sides, but I came up against a couple of problems. You can't do threading in CircuitPython, which means you could either have the touchscreen working or the other stuff. And also the touchscreen buffers the touches. So you touch it and then you touch it again and it's still buffered the ones that you pressed earlier. 3D printing wise, I did decide to do a case, use Tinkercad to design it. A tip from my friend Tim, who helps me organize Pi Wars, is to model what's going to go in the case and then put sides on it and subtract the bits that are inside. So that's what I did. That's the top of it and that's the bottom of the box. And I printed it and it was time to put it all together. So I did, it all fit. Everything was brilliant. So it came time to put the top on it. And there was too much stuff in the box because I hadn't counted on the wires and the pin endings of the jumper wires in my design. So there was no tolerances whatsoever. So I went back to Tinkercad and did the bigger version, which is on the right here. And you can see there's not much in it. When I put it together, because I'm not a complete idiot, I only partially assembled it just to make sure everything works. And the PCB actually worked first time both times, which was really good. This is it complete. This is a demo. I was going to do a live demo, but I think I haven't quite got enough time. But this is a recording of a demo that I did on Saturday. It takes a little while to boot up because it's right on the edge of what it can cope with. It's a physical button to swap modes. So it swaps into the thermal camera. Uses something called linear interpolation to make an 8x8 sensor become something that's actually better than it looks. And this is the other sensor, the GPS, which I don't think works because I've taken it outside and it doesn't work. So things that I've learned. Don't forget to build in space and tolerance. Memory on the Pico is everything. I come up against memory allocation errors if I try and switch modes too quickly at the start. It's right on the edge of what the Pico can do. You get a lot out of simple things like the thermal camera. You can do a lot with it. And the choices you make define the project. CircuitPython is easy to use, but it's got the right pain to use. And things I'm going to do in the future, more programming. There's at least one sensor on there that I haven't used. I still want to get the touchscreen working because the physical button will be there as a backup, but I want to get the touchboard working. Sound. My original plan was to have the tricorder sounds, the famous scanning sound when it was activated, but I had to back out of that because it doesn't do threads and I could either have sounds working or the sensors working. And I want to do some more user interface work. Ivan Holland has done so much better on his LCARS interface, and I want to put graphs and indicators on mine, but I don't know if the Pico can quite cope with it, with everything else going on. And I think I might redo the UI to use the Star Trek Enterprise aesthetic because the PicoPicorder doesn't really look like a next generation era device. So I've rattled through it. I hope you managed to follow it. And yeah, that's my project that I've been working on for 9 years.
Wow. So it started at the same time, around the same time as the Raspberry Pi and the jams, and hasn't stopped yet, because you're still saying, oh, I'd like to do this. And one thing I'm thinking about is, it sounds a little bit like something we were talking about earlier when you told me that you've been developing your project at work, which is the website that you've been working on. The big long project goes on for a very long time, except it sounds like it's taking you 4 times.
Well, yes, yeah. I kind of want it to be the PicoPicorder. I almost want it to be the end of it, but I know what else I could do. Can always be better.
It must be a few times where you thought, oh, I wish I'd never even started this thing. Oh, why did I think of starting? Yes. Well,
I had about a 2-year gap where I just didn't do anything on it. And I thought, no, I can't bear to look at it anymore. I'm going to disassemble it and use the bits. And I did. I've got empty enclosures with holes in them. But once I got the 3D printer, I thought I've got to come back to it because it's new skills, it's learning new stuff. And I love to learn new skills. although I do have real problems visualizing 3D designs in my head.
If you could go back to yourself now, would you say, "No, Michael, it's a terrible idea. Do not. Would you, or?
No, I wouldn't. I've learned a lot. My soldering skills, I didn't have any, and I was faking it basically, and it was looked awful. And the guy at Milton Keynes Jam, Peter Onion, took one look at it and said, "We're doing a workshop next time because you've got to learn to improve your soldering."
So the other thing, as you were presenting this, because I can remember right back at the beginning, Mike Horne and his PicoPicorder, and then when you put this down for this talk, I thought, gosh, has he still not finished that yet? Would you say that when you fill in a form to say, well, I'm going to talk about so-and-so, does that give you like a very strong motivational power to think, well goodness, I better turn up with something?
Yep, it gave me a lot of motivation to actually finish it for today.
So really, we shouldn't be thanking you. You should be thanking us.
Yes. Yeah. The device was stuck in thermal camera mode, didn't have the linear interpolation, looked awful, and I think some screws were still not put into it. And it's like, you know what? I want to actually finish it and have something I can take along to a jam.
Wow. So if we had a monthly theme, maybe 6 months or so, it was all to do with navigation or something like that, it might give you the spur to get the GPS tested and working.
Yep, as I say, I'm pretty sure that sensor has gone the way of the dodo. I think I've used it so much, I think I've probably burnt it out.
Right. I'm slightly nervous that our final speaker, Martin, hasn't said, yes, he's here. That was his cue to say, yes, I'm here, or yes, he's here. So
yeah, but he also had to unmute. He's here.
Okay. So, Michael, thank you. Michael, do you know if you're joining us in the jam jar, or are you jammed out now for this?
No, I'll join you for the jam jar. Looking forward to it.
So for people who don't know, the jam jar is we all go to a breakout room or two later on, and you can join us right at the beginning, and then just mute your camera, go off and feed the cat or take the fish for a walk, and then come back and you can just sit there and chill out and chat with people. Michael, thank you so much. 2 things to thank you for, but I think the thing you need to thank us for is even bigger, the fact that we've given you purpose to finish your PicoPicorder, or
yes,
proximal to finishing.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So, Martin, you can now reveal all, I hope, and I will stop my video and spotlight you. So, we're going to leave everybody in the dark now.
We are, yes. So my camera is currently being used. So hopefully it should be being shared.
Yes. So we can see a scratch screen, and we can see your camera in the corner.
So this isn't, it is Scratch, but it's a slightly modified version of Scratch. So you can see the URL up there. Maybe you can't, depends how tiny it is. It is scratch3.github.io. So in the current versions of Scratch, you can add in extensions. And these people, this is not something I created. It's just a version of Scratch that they've done. There is an extra library in here that they've put in, PoseNet to Scratch. So PoseNet is a series of AI that allows you to do object recognition. Specifically, the objects that it's been trained for in this version of Scratch is things like eyes, nose, ears, I think shoulders, elbows, wrists. So it can recognize people and it can kind of pick them out. And you get an extra set of really cool things, which is things like the position of the nose, the ear, etc. So you got like nose X, nose Y, left eye, right eye, etc. And you can use those to do some quite fun things. So I mentioned that I had this idea for that googly eyes, and Alan decided it should be alien version. So I've made it a little bit more alien than just a googly eyes. So on screen me, what you should be able to see is like 2 eyes to something that look vaguely like eyes that aren't kind of attached to me at the moment. But when I run it, it's picking out the PointNet to scratch is picking out my eye position, and it's placing those two ovals that I've done at funny angles, so it looks slightly more alien, over my eyes. And the pupils, I'm actually, so that the eyes, I'm using just a go-to, so it puts it directly on my eye wherever it detects it. But the pupils, I'm actually using a slide to, so it takes it a little bit of time, so you get kind of a nice googly eye effect kind of when you do that. So I actually built this as a worksheet for the virtual Lancashire Science Festival. So, along with everybody else, the Science Festival shut down, and we've actually been running virtually for the past week. So if you actually want to play with this, there's, if you go to lancashiresciencefestival.co.uk, there's a video of me talking about it in a slightly more condensed form. There's also activity sheets that you can have a look at. So it's an activity sheet that kind of runs you through step by step, kind of all the stuff that I'm going to play with and kind of show you for this. So it's on full screen. So what I've got is a number of items that are hanging around. So I've got my eyes that you can see. I'm just going to my left eye and going to my right eye. I'll talk about this scale thing in a second. And then I have just a vertical line that is just going to wherever my left eye and right ear is by gliding. And the gliding is the one that just gives you the googly eye effect. So I've got two of those, one for each eye. So obviously 2 eyes, 2 pupils. But then I've got some extra stuff kind of hanging around. So if I show those, because I'm supposed to be being alien, I have some, I don't know, dealy boppers, antennas, whatever they are, kind of sat over my head. The way those are working is all I have is a costume that is just a couple of rectangles at an angle and a couple of circles at the top. And I place that on my nose. So that position, the position of the center of the object, the center of the thing that we're drawing, is your nose position. And then all I do is I scale it so it fits for whether I'd like to move back or move forward, so it's kind of about the right size. I've calculated my head angle. So the talk about this talked about using triangles, artificial intelligence, and googly eyes. The triangles I'm actually using as to work out the position between my eyes, and that works out a scale factor. I'll show you the code in a second, which means that when I move backwards and forwards, it tries to scale things up or it scales things down so that it looks about the right size. And the pointing direction, which I'm using with the head angle, which I've calculated as, again, between my eyes, and just use some triangles to work out the angle that my head's at. And I just point things in that direction. The final one I actually put on was to make myself, oops, there we go, completely alien. So it's just a nice kind of oval shape that I've put in there as well, but it's doing exactly the same thing. I'm scaling it a little bit extra so it kind of comes up a little bit big, and then pointing it in my head angle so I get my nice kind of alien face kind of showing up. The bit that kind of calculating the angles and the scale sizes, I've attached that to the backdrop. So all the first pieces of code are doing, so I'm calculating, so the left eye Y, the right eye Y is just the height difference between my eyes. The right eye X, the left eye X is kind of the length distance between my eyes. And I'm doing those as a length A and a length B. And then I'm just using a length C. So it's just a right angled triangle. And the distance between my eyes, I actually turn that off. There we go. The distance between my eyes, when you go like that, I'm just making a right angled triangle between my eyes and just using the hypotenuse as the distance so that I can then calculate this scale factor. And that scale factor is the length of the hypotenuse. And then that 50 there is just a magic number. It's just a scale it to be whatever makes sense for, or whatever looks right for the size of eyes you've drawn and antennae you've drawn, face you've drawn, and whatever it is, and then just scale it up into a percentage so that you can feed it into Scratch, and it'll just scale things up as a percentage quite happily. The angle stuff is just using trigonometry. So it's just trigonometry to work out the angle of my head based on the triangle that my eyes make. And then I've just done a little bit of a fudge factor there so that it works out properly, so that kind of the dealy boppers actually end up in the right place and the face ends up in the right place. So we had this out at schools last week. I got sent some nice videos of kids actually playing with it. So it was aimed at primary school kids, but we didn't get any. I didn't see many people playing with things like antennas or. There was a nice moustache I saw. There was a kid that had this really big curly moustache that they put on, which was quite fun.
Have you considered putting like a hand kind of feature? So if you hold your hands up to the camera, it would put gloves on or
yes. So I've played with a few other things with it. So it'll do a skeleton outline of you quite happily. You can quite easily do that. And I was at the Science Festival. I was looking at two choices. Basically, that's what I was going to do. So the googly eyes, you can get up and running with a couple of lines of code and a couple of circles very easily. You don't need to do any of the scaling. You don't need to do any of anything, any of the head angles or anything like that to make googly eyes work. It's just a loop and a move a circle to the position of the eye. But the other one I considered doing was using the positive net so that when it captures, hands or things, it actually goes to wrists. It doesn't actually go T-hand. It'll do wrist, elbow, shoulder, I think knees, and then ankles. There's a character at the Science Festival, which is this robot. And one of the implementations it had, one of the drawing types it had, was a space robot. It could fly places. And I was thinking about making kind of like a Mars lander or a lunar lander, but instead of you having to use the keyboard to control angles or control thrust, it would be that you would point your arms. You stand quite far back, but you would point your arms, and each arm would have a thruster on it, and it would kind of combine those together in order to work out what angle you're going to be at in order to kind of go down. So I was looking at that. I was working out how to do that, and then I realised I was aiming this thing for like 9-10-year-olds, and I thought, no, the googly eyes is probably a lot better than just all the complicated maths for resolving forces. I figure kids would like this a lot more than anything else, basically.
What's nice as well about it is the fact that the objects move and the perspective element, which makes it, although it's not very refined, there's points where it leaves a gap between your head, but it does create this sense of movement.
Yeah, you get the idea that it's kind of working. It's also runs at about 15 frames a second, so it's not hugely fast. But it's in a web browser. It's doing object recognition. It's using a camera. It's recognizing like my eye. It's all done in Scratch. I'm going to cut it some slack, I think.
So sometimes when people show projects off, I'm trying to spot potential, but I've looking at, you and I have some facial similarities, and I'm just wondering whether we could have some kind of a hair feature that we could.
Already done that one.
Okay. Somebody's already
so I've done the hair. I've done the massive beard. I've done hats. So you can do a little hat that just kind of sits on top of your head and moves around on your head. While I was developing this, I kept testing it on my children. Not they would actually have a play with it. It was they would get to watch me looking incredibly stupid. To find out if, my youngest is 10, to find out if it was a nice aim for a 10-year-old if they were going to enjoy it. Googly eyes and silly things on your head, that seemed to work quite well.
Well, that's lovely, Martin. And I can see lots of people of all ages having fun with that. When I've shared the link, the stretch theory, I put that in the chat on YouTube.
There's also a tutorial that includes kind of this block of code, which calculates angles and scaling factors and all that sort of stuff. All that's included in that tutorial.
Which was on the Lancashire Science Festival site.
Yeah, well, Lancashire Science Festival.
Yeah, I've put the link in as well as that. So, and I will also include them in the video notes description tomorrow when I do.
I should advertise lots of other things. So there's lots of other things in the Lancashire Science Festival's virtual week, not just Google Earth.
That's right. And I've seen there's a lecture from Nikki Danino, who has joined us previously, on the Uncanny Valley.
Yes, yeah, we've got some stuff on the Uncanny Valley. We've got some stuff on security. I think there's things on sleep patterns. It kind of wanders off. It's not just computing related.
Right, fantastic. So if you could just finish your screen share, I'm now going to say thank you, Martin, and thank you, Michael. So that concludes the talks part of the event. So we started off, we had a careers and tech panel, which had to do 2 talks, and we're going to the final and third part. So if you're only planning on watching us on YouTube, we're going to be saying goodbye to you, or at least I'm going to be saying goodbye to you shortly. I have posted a message in the chat on YouTube, which has a link, which I'm going to read out now for people who can't read the chat. So the guests at the moment, we're hosting this session from a Zoom session, and now anybody can come and join using that link. And usually with the Jam Jar, people often join at first, but then go and do things and come back, and then they just chat and say hello to people. We'll set up 2 breakout rooms, so we can have a big one with lots of people in, and we can have a smaller one. So the link I'm going to read out, it's http:// and then it's exa.is, that is /RJam jar. But if that's confusing, you can do it without the R. So you could just type in into your browser, http:// exa.is /jam jar. So for the next minute or two, I'm going to repeat those instructions a couple of times. And while I'm here now, people will start joining us and being admitted to. So, and I'm just appointing Martin and Josh as co-hosts as well. So what will happen in a minute is I will stop the live stream. I'm going to stop the recording first of all, because we don't need to record this. So the recording is stopped now. So YouTube people, if you're not joining us in the Jam Jar, that's absolutely fine. We'll probably see you back on YouTube August maybe, but it's probably going to be September, October, November, and so on when people come back and with talks. A little bit doubtful at the moment about what we're going to do about the August Jam. If we don't have a venue, we may end up cobbling. The reason why we're going for the last Saturday of August is because there's a bank holiday weekend before the schools go back, and we wondered if some people were traveling up and down, like Mr. Footleg, for example. If it just so happened he was traveling up to visit the Lake District or somewhere like that, he might like to stop by Preston on the way. So the plan is to have an in-person festival, a bit of a fair on the last Saturday of August, once we've got the venue secured, which we haven't done yet, which is making me very nervous as it's our next jam. So you're going to still hear me waffle a little bit on YouTube, but you're not going to hear necessarily any new information. I'm saying goodbye to some people who are saying goodbye, and I'm waving as well. And there were some useful links that were shared in the last couple of talks. One shared by Paul, Dr. Footleg, to a KiCad tutorial. So I will put that in the link, the recording notes. And Martin mentioned a couple, which I will also include in there. So our Jam Jar is starting to fill up at the moment. In here, we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, if I count myself. And usually what happens is people just click on that link that I shared before. Yeah, that seems to work, and people are coming in. So it's exa.is jam jar. And I'm going to wait for another couple of minutes to see if there's more people coming in. We've got a couple more. It's starting to get a little bit busy in here. So I'm going to go and do that thing where I can go and make some breakout rooms. I'm going to go and create 2 breakout rooms. I'll see if I can have it so people can just choose. Create 2 breakout rooms, and I will let people choose the rooms. And I'm going to go and do that now. So the rooms are now open. So people can either stay here. Generally, people don't, because they don't want to stay and talk to me. They'd rather go and talk to somebody more interesting. But people can go now and join the breakout room. So Michael's gone off to room 2. John's gone to room 1. So I will say goodbye to people on YouTube in a moment, but all I'm doing now is I'm just letting you know that people are in there. We've still got some people who are in the main room with me. It may be that they're going to go and put the kettle on or take the cat out for a walk around the block. We usually run the breakout rooms for about an hour. Usually by the time an hour is done, when I say to people, are we ready to go? Most people are like, yep, that's great. And then a couple of people like to hang on for another few minutes at the end. And it'll probably run until about 9:30 or so. Right, I'm going to read the link out one more time, and then I'm going to say goodbye to people on YouTube. So the link to join the Jam, you can only do this if you're watching the live streaming version. The link is http://exa.is/jam jar. You can use RJam jar if you wish. Okay, so people on YouTube, I'm going to end the live stream. So thank you for joining us. Over and out from our July